From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. I'm Victor Gaucher, and this is your midday news and sports update for Wednesday, October 12th. Vancouver residents will head to the polls on Friday, but experts say that nearly half of registered voters are still undecided. The elected mayor will have their work cut out when elected. There are currently 59 people vying for one of Vancouver's 10 council seats. Political scientist Hamish Telford explains.
We're probably going to have a divided council with representatives from different parties and a mayor from another party. And so it will then be the job of the mayor really to make this divided council functional.
The BC SPCA is conducting a survey with hopes to inspire voters. Reporter Carissa Chang has the story.
BC SPCA hopes that this survey will help inspire voters to reflect on animal policy issues that they care about. The organization sends out follow-up questions to people who completed the survey so that they can be circulated to candidates. Municipal campaign organizer Dr. Sarah Dubois says that local bylaws is what will drive provincial change.
I think it's having the conversation with members of the public and getting them, empowering them to ask these questions to their potentially elected officials.
Results of the survey will be organized by region and shared with elected officials after the municipal election this weekend. Carissa Chang, 1680 The Crow.
And I'm now joined by reporter Carissa Chang. Carissa, hello.
Hi, Victor.
So, Carissa, what issues are being covered in this survey?
This public survey touches on issues around wildlife conflict, keeping exotic animals out of homes, humane rodent control, and increasing dog-friendly living spaces.
Is the survey still open?
Yes, it is. The survey is available on the BC SPCA website until Election Day on October 15th. Back to you,
Awesome.
Victor.
Thank you, Carissa. A police investigation has begun after 3 bushfires in 3 days erupted in Port Moody. Firefighters were called out to Port Moody's Heritage Mountain neighborhood on October 8th to respond to a bushfire, and then 2 more fires followed in the following days. Authorities believe all 3 fires are human-caused and connected. Due to the drought across the province, the fire danger rating is extreme at this time. The Burnaby School District is adding mental health support to their schools, and reporter Shivani Joshi has the story.
In light of the impacts the pandemic has had on teens, the Burnaby School District's Safe and Caring Schools team is tackling stress management this year. The year-long program includes training and workshops for mental health staff and professional development for teachers, counselors, and support staff. Each school also has a student-led mental health club which plans events to build awareness and education for the school community. Nick Christofides, the principal of the Safe and Caring Schools team, says stress does not have to be a bad thing and advises kids that stress can be channeled to help you succeed. This program is building on earlier efforts by the district to encourage positive mental health practices. Shivani Joshi, 1680 The Crow.
2 Ontario police officers have been killed in the line of duty. They have been identified as 54-year-old Constable Morgan Russell and 33-year-old Constable Devin Northrup. The 2 officers were responding to a disturbance on Tuesday night when gunfire was exchanged between the officers and a 23-year-old man inside the house. The suspect was also killed while inside the house. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau offers his condolences to the families and colleagues of the officers.
I know the families of people who serve are always worried for their loved ones as they step forward to serve their communities, to keep the rest of us safe. And I can't imagine what those families are going through. Please know that we stand with you as families. We stand with all those who step up to serve and protect us all.
A 3rd plane of Ukrainian refugees has landed in Newfoundland and Labrador today, as the provincial government has been doing their part to rescue those affected by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Maruf Madubov arrived in Canada in June on the 2nd plane to travel from Ukraine to Newfoundland, and he now works for the province's immigration department.
I'm trying not to think about it, but I'm thinking what could happen if my girls and my wife and we stuck there. So thank you, Newfoundland and Labrador, for the second chance.
3 people have been rescued alive after Russia's latest attack on Ukraine. Britt Clennett reports from Kyiv.
We are seeing more attacks on civilians by the Russians. You know, there was an attack on a market in the eastern town of Avdiivka, killing at least 7. You know, the strike took place at a busy time, which is something we saw on Monday too. These peak hour attacks for maximum impact. Shelling in Nikopol too, severely injuring several people, including a 6-year-old girl. You know, 2 kindergartens, a school were among those attacked.
Once longtime enemies, Israel and Lebanon have reached an agreement over a patch in the Mediterranean Sea after months of U.S. brokered negotiations. Lebanon now has the right to access gas reserves within the Mediterranean Sea, ultimately helping both countries. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken explains.
It's going to benefit the region and ultimately benefit the entire world with very significant new energy sources coming to market in the years ahead.
Moving on to sports now, the Vancouver Canucks 2022-23 NHL season is finally here as they are scheduled to take on the Edmonton Oilers tonight. Thatcher Demko is expected to start between the pipes for Vancouver, while Jack Campbell is expected for Edmonton. Canucks forward Brock Besser is also expected to be in the lineup tonight as he has recovered from hand surgery he had back in September. The Major League Baseball Divisional Series began Tuesday night with some very entertaining matches. The Mariners lost a nail-biter to the Houston Astros as the Astros scored 5 runs in the last 2 innings, including a 3-run walk-off home run to grab an 8-7 victory and a 1-0 series lead. In Philadelphia, the Phillies survived a late comeback attempt by the Braves to hold on to a 7-6 victory, and a gem of a pitching performance by Garrett Cole helped the Yankees bat away the Guardians. The Dodgers scored early and stayed in control to beat the Padres 5-3 in their first matchup. In NFL news, Las Vegas Raiders receiver Davante Adams has been charged with a misdemeanor assault for his actions on Monday night. The Kansas City Chiefs came back to defeat the Raiders on Monday night, and Adams was visibly upset as he shoved a photographer to the ground on his way back to the locker room. Adams has since issued an apology to the photographer. In other NFL news, Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is slated to return to the field for throwing drills at Dolphins practice on Wednesday. Although Tua is returning to practice today, he is still unlikely to play Sunday against the Vikings. Tagovailoa was stretchered off when he suffered a concussion in Week 4 against the Bengals when his head appeared to hit the field. Tagovailoa also exited Week 3's game against the Bills when, after a hit, Tua stood up looking disoriented. The NFL is continuing to reevaluate their concussion protocol. Moving on to weather. The sun is still shining in Vancouver, as the high for Wednesday will be 22 with a mix of sun and cloud. And this weekend, it looks like it will be continuing to shape up as the warmest October in recent time, with temperatures expected to reach as high as 26 degrees Celsius. BC continues to be in a drought with no rain expected in the Vancouver area until next Monday. Those are your news updates for Wednesday, October 12th. I'm Victor Gaucher, and thanks for listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Teresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika King. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Thanks for joining us here on another companion call for BCIT News. I'm Chad Asleo, your host today, and we are on the British Columbia Institute of Technology here in Burnaby, and BCIT and ourselves acknowledges that the campus is located on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish nations, which include Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish Nation. Today I have Aaron Mitchell. He's here today to talk about the Two-Spirit community. We're going to learn a bit more about him and also the Four Feathers Society, which he's also a part of. So I want to thank you, Aaron, for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm wondering, I wanted to leave it to you to let us know a bit more about how you identify your pronouns and let me know a bit more about you and if you want to include a bit more about your Indigenous background.
So I identify as a two-spirited Indigenous male.
Mm-hmm.
What that means to me is that I'm gay and that I am Indigenous as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for me as well, the two-spirited term means that you're walking on the red road as well, so that healing journey.
Okay. And I think we're going to get into that a bit more because I really want to learn to identify about the terminology and what makes it, different than the typical LGBTQ plus community. So can you tell me, because you said what it means to me, what Two-Spirit is to you, is there a more underlying umbrella term that you could teach people that are listening and watching what Two-Spirit means?
I guess so. Two-spirited is an Indigenous term for the LGBTQ umbrella. So it doesn't necessarily mean gay or bi. It's kind of that umbrella term as well. So anyone that fits in that LGBTQ plus fits in there, but I'd say they need to be Indigenous as well for that term.
Okay. And can you tell me, and again, it might be a bit obvious, but if you can tell me what are the underlying reasons why it's important today for Indigenous people that are part of this community to identify under the Two-Spirit category, if I may be so bold, or and because it's obviously part of the LGBTQ community, but there's this terminology that's separating Indigenous people instead of LGBTQ. Can you tell me why that difference is so important?
I guess because it's bringing back that decolonization, right? So back in the day, two-spirited individuals were considered higher. Like they were usually shamans, like medicine men or women. So it's that decolonization and educating, I guess, right? So with the residential schools and everything, that the churches kind of took that away, right? So it's bringing it back and showing that it's okay to be who you are.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about that when we were communicating through email before we met here physically, and you talked about the struggles that you have with your identity today. You're still facing it compared to what you had, growing up and younger. So can you tell me a bit about the struggles you had as a young Indigenous person and how you're still trying to find who you are today?
When I was growing up, I was in a small community. So there wasn't many people that were out, I guess. So I didn't really know where I was, who I was, because I didn't really see it. And I guess in a way it felt wrong because it wasn't normal.
Were you, like, when did you know that you were different?
I'd probably say around 10 to 12-ish.
10, 12, okay. Now, growing up in a small community, obviously times have changed now where there's a lot more acceptance to the LGBTQ plus community. Now, as somebody who is out and is actively part of a society, which we're going to talk about, do you feel like, maybe you can't speak for Indigenous communities as a whole, but the community you're from, do you feel like there's been a greater sense of acceptance of the community and yourself?
I'm not really sure. Like I haven't really been part of my community that I grew up in. I was always I went to school off of the reserve and away from the community. I do know a few community members that have came out as well, so I don't really see the discrimination, but I'm not also there to know if it is happening or not.
Sort of like myself too, a bit more of a urban Indigenous member.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Now let's talk a bit about the Four Feather Society, which is where I found you guys online and how we're here today. And it seems like it is a support community for two-spirited people in the Lower Mainland. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate and extend on why it's important that you're a part of this society and what are they doing to help two-spirited community members?
Why it's important for me to be part of that is to get that education out, and make it more, I guess, that acceptance level. Like, it is acceptable, but it's not in a way, right? Like, different people have different views. So I guess it's just letting people know that there is people there that they can talk to, or there is that community that they can be part of and not feel alone.
So would you say that's the main goal of the society, is that people who are two-spirited and need that support and that help and like that's the place to go, sort of a safe haven is what you're getting at?
Yeah, I guess, and the healing part of it, right? So part of the society, what we do is we put on groups that could be talking circles. Some of them are educational groups as well. So getting into like trauma healing, grief and loss, and just other groups like that brings people together to be able to talk about issues that are going on.
Now, again, this may be a bold question. You don't have to answer it if you don't really know, but maybe you could speculate on it. Do two-spirited or Indigenous people that identify within the queer community or LGBTQ community, do they feel like having this two-spirited society speaks to them more, it can help them more than, let's say, regular, not to criticize any other society, but do you feel like the meaningfulness behind this society speaks to them more, can help them heal better? Do you feel like just having people that they see that looks like them is going to make a bigger difference and a bigger impact in their lives?
I would say so, yeah, because part of it is all of us that are part of the society are in that umbrella term LGBTQ, two-spirited, and we're all Indigenous as well. So it's like people helping like people. And I've always found when I do my healing, that's more powerful for myself.
Can you speak to what the healing looks like? I don't know how much detail you can give us, but what does some of the healing process look like to people that are a part of the two-spirit community?
I guess it'd be easier to share a little bit more about what it is for me.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love that.
For me, it's that talking about traumas that happened, or that trauma can be anything, right? It could be just bullying. It could be more severe than that as well. So it's that safe place to be able to talk about it. And I've always found the more you talk about it, the less it hurts.
I want to ask you, the terminology two-spirited, because when I've gone around and talked to colleagues and friends, generally the term hasn't been heard of before. So it's a new term, at least within my circle of friends and colleagues, that it's such a new terminology that when they even ask me how to describe it, I said, I don't know, I can't yet. I'm going to talk to somebody who knows. What does the future hold for the two-spirit community? Do you feel more people are going to be able to come out more, feel more comfortable, and like, what do you think the future holds for the two-spirit community, at least on the Lower Mainland?
I guess in hopes anyways, it's getting that greater understanding out, and part of the reconciliation and all of that. I'm hoping it's going to be a safer place, and that people feel more comfortable to come out and be themselves. Because I know when I was hiding it was very uncomfortable. And just not being able to be who I am. And sometimes even in circles now, I still hide that because I'm not 100% sure how people are going to act or react.
So that's where you're getting at, where you're saying the struggle is still real because there's still a lot of education that the general public needs to be more accepting for you to feel, at least you personally, to just be yourself all the time, 24/7.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I hope that changes, and it's conversations like what we're having today that hopefully will make a difference to, you know, even if you inspire one Indigenous person who's struggling. I mean, I would at least assume that you feel like it's a job well done. So I'm sure you're doing some great work. Now, can you also let me know a bit about if the True Spirit community, or even if you want to talk to Four Feathers, speak on behalf of Four Feathers, is there a communication and a working together kind of process for, because there's lots of LGBTQ plus societies. Do you commonly work together towards similar goals?
Yes, but with the COVID going on, I know it's kind of ending now, but it was a lot harder to get together and do that. So with things opening up again, that hope is that we get back to being able to partner with other organizations to be able to, I guess, even put out more of that education if they're not necessarily Indigenous organizations.
Absolutely. Now, for people that are listening and watching, if they are somebody who's Indigenous and want to maybe take that first step and reaching out to yourself or the Four Feathers Society, what is the best way for somebody who's kind of on the fence of what they should do?
Probably right now the best way is our website, which is fourfeathersociety.com. And there's a membership application form as well. And when you do that, we actually mail out a welcome package, which is a smudge bowl and some sage and I believe sweetgrass.
Oh, that's nice. Awesome. So what are the other benefits that come from signing up as a member for Four Feathers?
You'll be notified about groups that we're putting on. Again, that's kind of how you apply for or sign up for the groups as well, because some of them are limited spaces.
So back when you were younger, and you were going through these struggles of, you know, finding yourself and kind of keeping it to yourself, do you feel like your life would have been different or easier if a society like this had existed when you were younger? Do you feel like the impact of these types of groups are really making a difference in people's lives?
I do feel like it would have been different because I would have realized that there was people out there like me. I felt like it was just me and I was broken, I guess, is the best way to put it. Or not normal, but what is normal even, right? So it's... I think having that society would have been even easier, right? Knowing that there's people there, people that I could have talked to, and
giving you the support that you need, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And because you've obviously worked directly with a lot of members and people coming through the society, what has been the general reaction of those people who are going through the programs? Can you maybe give us a little insight on how it's changing their lives?
I guess I've been able to see people do their healing, right, and have that space to be able to talk. So seeing more comfort from them, and from the beginning to maybe a couple groups in, they're more comfortable speaking in front of the other people as well.
You must see when they come in, maybe, really timid and reserved, and then as time goes by, when you get to know people, all of a sudden they might be a completely different human being, like week 3, 4, 5, or 6, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
Yeah, what a difference, eh? I mean, that's how you can tell, right? You can tell that they're being more comfortable, more open. At least I would assume so. That's amazing. Now this might be an interesting thing to find out, is looking into part of the healing process can involve many different things. Does the society or other societies have like elders that come in and help with the healing process as well too?
We have had elders. Again, most of our stuff's been through Zoom, just the challenging times right now. So we have elders that participated in the Zooms for people to talk to. We did do an event. It was kind of like a camp out healing, and we had some elders there as well. And I have seen a lot more organizations out there having the elders come in as well.
That's good. Sounds like that's really helpful. Well, Aaron, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come here to the BCIT Burnaby campus and talk about the Two-Spirit community, talk about your journey, and these things are sometimes hard to talk about, but I'm sure people that are listening and watching will hopefully appreciate the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Like, if I leave them on, I ruin the streak of the last, 10 years of never wearing shoes where I work. I do all kinds of tattoos, whatever the customer asks for mostly. But lately I've been doing mostly form line style of indigenous tattoos. I'm Métis on my dad's side, but I was raised by my mom. So I didn't grow up with a huge personal connection to my indigenous ancestry. But as I started doing more indigenous tattoos, that kind of got me a little bit more interested in finding more about my own history.
Bahasa Hari Tundo, Tatemusli, Sastrosli, Nadle Witen Yinka Dene Dakesh. In my language, that means my name is Randall Bear Barnetson. I come from the Bear Clan, the village of Nadle, and of the Dakesh First Nation. That's my nation. The back tattoo, I think it's been about 12 hours now, I would say. 10 to 12 hours. On my left arm here, I have the bear for Dentemu, my Bear Clan. And then I have the Thunderbirds on the middle, and then the double eagles on the bottom. So this is for my Dakelth people on my mother's side, and then also the double eagles for my Newhawk family, and then the Thunderbirds for my father's side. His crest was a Thunderbird. So that's why I have the Thunderbird on my back as well, along with the bear. Since time immemorial, we would commission an artist to do a clan design or a crest for us in our community. We'd go to a local artist and ask them to do a design for our clan or community to represent ourselves, our family, our community, our nation.
Adi, Ani, Sasan, welcome to my studio.
So my tattoos, they all represent that, from my Bear Clan to my Thunderbirds to my Eagle Clan. They represent and they place me in my community and show my affiliation there. And so that's why I love working with Logan, because Logan, he helps me to kind of embody these teachings in these clans and crests, and he really contextualizes these teachings that we have. And then on this side, I got the East Van cross, because where I was born, East Van. So I kind of go between two, because traditionally, land and people are the most important things to us as traditional indigenous people. So when I turned 18, I was like, I'm gonna get the East Van cross on my arm. I'm gonna go to do it. I went to a tattoo artist and he said, nah, come back in a couple of years when you figure it out a bit more. And I was like, what the hell, man? I want to get tattooed. And he was like, nah, think about it some more, come back. And then I waited a decade and then Logan did it for me.
My name is Shanton Hopkins. I am a tattoo artist here at East Van Tattoo Company. Born and raised in East Vancouver. I am Indigenous to Darcy Anderson Lake, better known to us as the Naquaqua people. It's part of the Stallion Nation. So growing up, I was a pretty rebellious kid. Just always getting into trouble, getting into fights, drinking, stealing cars when I was 12. Went to jail when I was 14. It's just a lot of pain and trauma from my mother. She was an alcoholic who dealt with her generational trauma from my grandmother, who was in residential school. So just trickled down, passed down to me, right? But me and myself, I've been doing a lot of work on myself. I've been sober now for 3 years. Trying to break the chain and the link for my kids, right? So my style, I like to stick with a realism, black and gray, but I like to try to incorporate a native form line art to it. So I do my own West Coast style, form line, native art with the realism. Yeah, it's just sort of a unique touch that I wanted to come up with. For me, I always wanted to sort of incorporate like the native art inside of my tattoo work. And black and gray realism is something that I always wanted to pursue. I want to keep that style of art alive. I want to keep the form line art alive, right? It's been here already for centuries. Even though it's been tweaked a little bit, whatever, like all artists have their own styles of their own art, right? Well, we have all kinds of different backgrounds getting like Oriental Japanese style sleeves. I tattooed this native guy just last week. We did a full native realism piece on his arm, full sleeve. He already had an existing like Oriental Japanese style dragon on his other arm, right? I'm like, yeah, if like you have like enough love and respect for the culture, like I don't see why it would be an issue for anybody to want to get like form line native art tattooed on their bodies, right? If it's nothing but love and respect, that's all that matters, right?
I think it's really complicated. It's non-Indigenous people, unless there's like, the way I was taught is if there's a story, connection to the story, and you go about it in a good way, as you do work with an Indigenous artist, and you go about the proper protocols, and you know the story and the connection there, then it's more acceptable. However, if you get a clan design or a clan crest, then that has such larger meaning behind it, and affiliation to, like I said, to place, community, to people. And you're essentially saying that you are part of them. And that's a tough thing to claim. And we always say it's not who you claim, but who claims you.
It's a little controversial, and it's everybody has a differing viewpoint. And for me, it's different client to client. Like sometimes, like I have some European tourist that's like, yeah, I want this salmon because I'm in Canada. And in that case, like, you know, go home and think about it a little bit, do a little bit of research. But other times, like I've tattooed white people that have been adopted by a nation and have lived their whole life on reserve and around Indigenous art and Indigenous people, and they want to honor that. And I think that's dope too.
Was a strip club and very much like a biker skittish kind of hangout. My dad's stories about Steveston are a lot different than what my feelings about Steveston.
I see Indigenous tattooing kind of flourishing even more. Just the artwork in itself is becoming more and more popular. People are more down to collect fine art and that sort of thing. Like I know the Canucks are having warm-up jerseys done by an Indigenous artist. So it's kind of in people's faces so much more, and it's so much more like widely accepted. And yeah, I think the future is bright for Indigenous tattooers, for sure.
Does it feel?
Yeah.
Greatest feeling in the world.
Natalia for showcasing Logan and traditional tattooing and traditional Indigenous art, and having this be a part of the conversation and bringing us to the table in that. So, Natalia in my language means thank you for everything you've done for us.
I was just gonna go do my own thing, but then I ended up, there's something in me that just stopped, and I sat on the curb and I just started crying, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, what? This is just, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm Amberlina Murray. I'm 33 years old, and I was raised in Port Coquitlam. So I was 9 years old when I started smoking weed, but it quickly, like between 9 and 10, probably 10 or 11 is when I started getting into ecstasy and cocaine and more of the harder drugs. I was fully addicted to crystal meth when I would say 13 is when I was fully addicted to it. I was born with a very sick mother, so I was born addicted already. And then my whole childhood was full of abuse and anger, and my mom being sick and having to watch over her, as well as she lived in the hospital pretty much in nursing homes because she couldn't care for herself.
What happened with Amber's mom and Amber is an absolute tragedy, and no child should have to go through that, and it breaks my heart.
So we didn't have like a good relationship at all. My dad, I was always daddy's little girl, but at the same time there was not much my dad could do because he was so focused on taking care of my mom, like he was her caretaker. I think he was at a point in his life where he just didn't know what to do. His life was so chaotic with this one woman that he didn't even know how to deal with his daughter who was addicted to drugs. As soon as I started smoking weed with friends at a youth center or started doing ecstasy, or the one thing that came to mind was I didn't have to feel anymore. Like those feelings were gone. Like I didn't feel pain, I didn't feel anything. And it was an amazing feeling. Finally, once in my life, I could turn to something that I didn't have to feel. It was when I had kids is when I realized I had a problem. I got clean at 15, 16. I stayed clean. I had the two older kids, Savannah and Caden. And then I split up from I left their dad. And all I knew was that little family. Like that meant the world to me. When we split up, I went right back into addiction and left the kids with my dad and their dad. And I didn't get clean until my youngest kid's dad came in the picture. And I only stayed clean because I got pregnant right away. I had no idea how to even get like a month or 2 months. 2 months was probably my longest. And then I just kept relapsing. I was definitely loaded there. And we went to the P&E and I couldn't even handle it for like 2 seconds. I was in the bathroom like the whole time. Like I was a shitty human being, like shitty. Like I was not a nice person unless I wanted something. That was the only time I was nice. And as soon as I got it, you wouldn't see me again. Like I just, totally opposite person than who I am off drugs. And that's just how it is when you want to get clean, it's like you want to get clean, but your head's like so powerful in that moment when you start detoxing that it's like crippling. And so I talked myself into making a phone call. And when I asked to make a phone call, they said, if you make the phone call, you need to leave right now. And I still decided to make the phone call. And there was no pickup from my dealer. So they kicked me out anyway. The recovery house, a lot of them I got banned from continuing to come back and not staying clean. Not from anything bad I did, but because of not staying clean. Like some places are just like, like you're clearly not getting it, so maybe go to a different place.
She had nobody, and she was alone. And I remember everybody coming up to me and saying, hey, don't waste your time, you know what, she's just gonna end up doing this, or this. And I can understand where they were coming from, right? Because a lot of people invested a lot into Amber, and Amber made unhealthy choices, but that's to be expected by somebody that is in addiction, right?
I have overdosed 4 times. The very first time I overdosed, it was actually my kids who found me in the living room, as I was still living with my youngest kid's dad at the time. And he ended up calling, they started screaming, and then he ended up calling an ambulance and stuff. And then I went code blue in the ambulance. I was able to make it through, thankfully, but yeah, that was probably like my lowest. There's something in me that just stopped, And I sat on the curb and I just started crying. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, what? This is just, I don't want to do this anymore. I remember being in like recovery for like in a recovery house for like the 6th time, and I had a weekend, or not a weekend, but my youngest kid's dad brought them all to me to have like an hour visit. And I remember like that so clearly, that they were leaving, and this is after about 6 months and not seeing them at all because I was in addiction, and then the recovery house I was in, you can't see anyone for a month. So he came and brought them, and when they were leaving, all 3 of them were like screaming and crying and like would not let go of me at all. Where the staff at the house had to come out and pry them off me, and I like cried for days.
I just didn't want to let go, and I wanted to stay with her, and I just wanted her to come back home with us. I just felt really sad because I didn't understand why my mom couldn't come see us and why we always had to come see her.
It's heartbreaking. It's like, I'm doing this. Like, I'm doing this by not putting the work into me and continuing to use. I'm causing so much trauma in my kids that I grew up with. And I mean, they're floating around house to house like there's no stability at all. So, and no one's gonna love them the way that I love them.
Because of my chronic relapsing, to help me stay in the houses, of writing what the kids would say to me. I love you, Mommy, and I want you to stay there and get the help you need. So when you come home, we can laugh and have fun again together.
Like, addiction took everything from me, like my ability to be a mom, my ability to know how to even love on my kids. Like, I didn't know how to hug my kids anymore. Like, that natural mom instincts were gone. Like, I had to relearn all that through my recovery. It took me a long time to even talk about my mom, like before I got clean this time, but I knew if I wanted to stay clean this time, I had to talk about her. So like prior to this, like I just hated her. Like I thought she ruined my whole life. Because I knew like deep down that if I didn't have a mom like that, I probably would have had a better chance in life.
Yeah, myself and one other woman in this.
I did feel like the kids deserved to know why they went through what they did. And also deserve to know, like, and also sharing my experience with them maybe help them for their future. And if my parents shared with me their experience, I would have known what a Narcotics Anonymous was. I would have known what Alcoholics Anonymous was. I would have known where to go to get help.
I think it's amazing that Amber is like super honest with them and super transparent. And but I also think that Amber does that because she wants to make sure that they understand that, you know, this is what happens and these are the consequences.
You're going out with Auntie Sunday morning. What day am I?
She understands what she put us through, and I feel like she tries to make up for it all the time. But like now, there's nothing really to make up for anymore.
So this is something I keep, and it's like all my medallions over the years.
From the broadcast center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, my name is Kyle Collis, and I'm here with your news and weather updates to 1 p.m. The BC Coroner Service state that preliminary figures show deaths among the province's homeless population climbed over the last year compared with 2021. A statement from the coroner's office says 247 deaths were recorded among people experiencing homelessness last year, which is a 75% increase over 2020. The report shows an average of 153 deaths were reported annually among the homeless population between 2016 and 2020, and deaths from toxic illicit drugs are a key reason for the latest jump. Vancouver police say a man charged in a machete attack on the downtown east side is back in custody after allegedly breaching his bail conditions last month. They say in a statement that 37-year-old Kenneth Salowan was arrested again Saturday in Mission after witnesses recognized him from a picture released by police. Salowan is charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault for allegedly attacking 2 strangers with a machete last spring as they were loading luggage into a taxi outside of a hotel. The police say he was ordered into a residential treatment facility in Surrey as a part of the conditions of his release on September 29th. People making the transition to electric vehicles will have more access to charging. Our reporter Sylvia Senna has the story.
BC Ministry of Energy just announced 44 new charging stations for electric vehicles in the province. They are funded by the Clean BC Go Electric Public Charger program that aims to support the growing number of electric vehicles on the road. 14 communities will benefit from the new charging stations, including Coquitlam, Victoria, Richmond, and Vancouver. Sylvia Senna, 1680 The Crow.
Ontario's police watchdog says the 2 police officers who passed away after a shooting at a home north of Toronto had exchanged gunfire with a 23-year-old man. John Kennedy from the Canadian Press has that story.
The Special Investigations Unit says both officers died in hospital, and the 23-year-old man died at the scene at the home in Innisfil. The South Simcoe Police Service says the officers went to the home for a disturbance call last night. The identities of the officers have not been released. The SIU says it's assigned 6 investigators and 3 forensic investigators to the case. Both Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau have expressed their condolences. John Kennedy, The Canadian Press, Toronto.
Staying outside of BC, Alberta's new premier says fixing human rights laws to protect those who chose not to get vaccinated is among items on her agenda. Danielle Smith told reporters yesterday that she cannot think of a single group that has faced more discrimination in her lifetime than those who chose not to get vaccinated against COVID-19. She also says she will be replacing top management at Alberta Health Services within 3 months, claiming the agency failed to provide the care expected during the pandemic. BC Premier John Horgan said on CFAX Radio in Victoria that Danielle Smith's comments about unvaccinated people are laughable. Some Western nations are sending more weapons systems to Ukraine. ABC's Tom Rivers has more.
Given this week's Russian missile attacks on Ukrainian cities, President Zelensky is asking now for more and better air defense systems. In Brussels, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says,
Allies have provided air defense, but we need even more. We need different types of air defense, short range, long range air defense systems to take ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, different systems for different tasks.
U.S. and Germany both signaling they'll contribute to this latest wish list. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
Back to local news. With a record hot fall in the Lower Mainland, our reporter Chadis Leo finds out what winter has in store for BC mountains.
Although the time to head up the mountain to ski and snowboard is still months away, there is still potential that a sudden change in temperature from a dry fall to a snowy winter could increase the amount of avalanches this winter. Lisa Parazzoli, communications coordinator from Avalanche Canada, explains how the abrupt change can affect snowpacks.
Any long period between snowfalls can develop weak crystals on the surface of the snowpack. And when that surface gets buried, those weak crystals often become persistent weak layers that can haunt us for many weeks, months, and sometimes even the whole season.
Parazzoli suggests all alpine recreational users check Avalanche Canada and other weather-related apps before going up the mountain. For 1680 The Crow, I'm Chadis Leo.
Staying with weather, currently it's all sun and a mix of clouds as we sit at 14 degrees. The high of the day is 21, but it could go as low as 8 into the night. And we can expect more of the same for the rest of the week. Those are your news and weather updates to 1 p.m. Once again, my name is Kyle Collis. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.